off riding superbly, and he's got a lot of speed in those legs. Swings off, looks for a little bit of help. And the peloton being given more or less a free ride here. As far as we know now, this is Stanglish who's having a continuation of the trend set. And Goresh is a good rider, very strong indeed. Had his good days in his life as well. He won the Tour of Tuscany a couple of years ago, and he finished 5th in the Midi Libre, 4th rather in the Tour of Austria. Very good time trialist. He won the national championship back in the year 2000, where he was disqualified, and I believe that was under a doping cloud. He seems to have successfully come back since then. This is the unlucky man, by the way, Goresh Stangley. You may remember in the Giro d'Italia last year, in the prologue, he crashed and broke his collarbone, and that was the end of the Tour in the shortest stage of the 3-week race, which is very sad. Hasn't really done much since then either. Well, the peloton matching the breakaway, pedal rev for pedal rev, but they're not cutting through into it yet. There's a little bit of aggravation forming in this breakaway too, because I think the 1 or 2 riders now are beginning to tag on to the back and not quite put in their work rate. Just about 48 kilometers to go now at AO, and that'll put us well, not very far, maybe 2 kilometers or so, 2 or 3 kilometers only from the climb. Young Echevarria, the Venezuelan rider, slipping away, done his turn at the front. Unai Osa taking them through now. 15 riders still clear, and still clear by a good margin. This route, a very tortuous route. It picks its way through the countryside on what are pretty well surfaced roads, but in parts of the countryside they don't see much traffic at all at this time of the year. Still conserving 2:16 with 46 to go. It's always from a shot like that you get some idea just how quick that breakaway is moving over the ground from the helicopter. A lot of work being done by the Seiko riders. Igor Astaloa, man that could deliver the goods at the finish. He's definitely of the championship temperament, and he's got the legs at the moment, because 10th in the Amstel Gold race just a few days ago. Probably his best ever classic performance, I suspect, was 2nd place in the San Sebastian Classic, which was last year towards the end of the year. Very nice compact group now. They've got themselves a little double echelon working. Keep your eye on the tail, see if anybody just collects tickets and waves the next man through in front. But at the moment, it looks as though it's just the one rider there who's struggling a little bit from the Once team. That'll be Angel Castran-Sama. He seems to be more content with just stocking up for the finish. He's starting to feel a little bit rough, and one of the telecom riders there has dropped back to have a word, pushed him up the line. It was Torsten Heckman who did that. Well, they look as though they're keeping this speed up quite willingly here, and it's going to be a very difficult chase back. They've got to use now the small foothills that we're approaching. They come fairly thick and fast in this last 45 kilometres of the day. But if the whole peloton gets across, if it gets across, and CSC are now chipping in 10 penny worth of work, but if it gets across, then it's going to be an amazing finish up the hill. These long straight roads, but the helicopter often out of sight of the peloton because of the trees. We're into the woods of the Ardennes. And once through these trees, they won't be far away from the Coutis. It's not very far away to the climb now. This is the neutral service car from Mavic here, who are tagged onto the tail. Fofanov coming back for a word. And a drink. No, nothing. And I don't know what the boards we saw there just flew by, but it might have been 45 kilometres to go. Another change of direction. Sharp left. And this is the approach now to the climb. 9% at its steepest, average of 7.3, and the American flag there indicating good news. It's a tailwind up the climb, but you know that very often can be hard. If you are struggling at the back and they pick up a useful tailwind, then they'll tear your legs off on the climb. 2:07, we're approaching the 2-minute margin again after a tremendous turn of speed on the front by Fassa Bortolo, and looks like we're getting in the way here, which will not go down well. 2:07, knocked off a few more seconds as we're on the climb here now. Fofanov sitting at the back there. Christophe Moreau is the rider who's just keeping everything under control. Perhaps just hoping to keep the pace himself. It'll be a crosswind now as they make this turn to the left. A little bit of an idea there. You can see the sort of drag over the side of this hill. Well, we've had a good look at the crops. Now we can find the riders. Osa. Much more relaxed and happy when the road's going up. Not very far from the summit of this climb actually, and it looks as though no one's been placed in difficulty. Not if Osa's sitting near the back. This is Heikman. Fofanov just in front, and then we've got Lunay Echevarria. Pace still being set, or was. There's the banner by Moreau. So the 15 have stayed together. Nobody has been unhitched. As they go over the Côte de Coutis, the next stop will be the Côte de Belterre. About 3 miles or 5 kilometres ahead. Another one they can tick off. We're heading back towards the department of Liège now. Not quite there yet. Off and off there. Well, I hope we get a chance to glimpse the peloton on this climb, because I've got a feeling that the strong men, if they've got any ambition today, must really drive over this climb. But just now we are watching Oscar Masson set the pace. Just about 50% of this line seems to be working just now on the climbs. Just over one of those sleeping policemen, as they call them, the traffic humps. Really does ruin your rhythm. So the rider's coming away from Coutis now. This is the sharp right turn onto yet another one of this myriad of small Route Nationale roads here. Back to the peloton now, and they are on the climb. Is anybody going to try and unleash an attack? They've got it inside 2 minutes after an awful long time and a lot of effort at 41 kilometres. Just on 25 miles from the finish, we're over the top, still CSC and Fassa Bortolo setting the pace at the front. Could be Sastre this for CSC. You can see the Rabobank riders would love to give them a hand, but they're having to sit there and wait in the hope that they can get Bogart away before the finish, because they have Mark Lotz up front. And Lotz, you know, he could be a dark horse here. He doesn't win many races in his life. He hasn't won many at all, but everybody has their day when it works out, and you've got to keep trying. Good long turn here by CSC. Now this is the same stretch of road where we've seen the break, and it seems to me as though it might be inside 158 just now. And if we're going to see the whole peloton come back, that's going to make it a very strange affair in the last 30 kilometres of the race. This is the breakaway, still all of them together, all 15 riders. Well, Telecom have lost one of the star men, certainly today. Alexander Vinokurov, sitting near the tail, has slipped away and dropped off. Done enough for the day. Onto the Côte de Bel Air, 900 metres now. And this will put the breakaway just around about, well, inside 40, about 38 kilometres to go once they're over the top. Beautiful chateau with what looks like a complete moat around it. But that breakaway speeding towards the short climb, as they just about got onto it here. They seem to have satisfied themselves with a consistent pace rather than trying to attack. 11% the steepest, the average gradient here 8%, so it kicks in the middle, just over 1 in 10. Just about where they are now. And 39 kilometres from the finish as we speak. Christophe Moreau has got into the back seat, but I think Christophe is riding well today. He's never been under pressure. Udo Boltz controlling the front, which he'll do because he's not the man he was, and he'll keep an eye on things by controlling the pace. Still an immensely strong cyclist nonetheless. But again, another one of these small climbs, and nobody delivering an attack to try and liven the race up at the front. And this is why riders like Udo Boltz, now what, 36, 37 years of age, Udo, is now more content to try and control the frisky ones by setting the tempo near the front. Somebody's had a little dig. There's a bit of action here from the tail as they're closing gaps. And Udo knows this course, although it changes fractionally every year in some way or another. He's had two recent good performances, 20th last year and 6th in 1999, and a chance again of a top 10 finish if they can stay away. The last check we got 158, I think it might have come down just a little bit here. Christophe Moreau now sitting at the back all the way up this climb. But once more, everybody gritting the teeth and holding on to the wheel in front. No gaps really forming. And as they go over the top now of the Côte de Bel Air, it's another one they can mark off as they're now moving close to the Côte de Boisseau. And then we're into the province of Liège for the last 27 kilometres. A minute, just inside 2 minutes still. As we come away now from the climb, swinging right here. To pass through Grogne. We're going to be something like 3 kilometres now from the climb of the Côte de Boisseau. I think the riders behind are not going to be too happy with the progress here. They've left it just to the one team. Fassa Bortolo, CSC helping a little bit, but hardly evidently putting them back into the chase. There is still a chance this breakaway can hold. It has a habit, this race, of coming together in the last 20k before the breakaway finally goes away, but I must say these riders haven't really slowed down at all, and they've hung on well to the gains because they've never really escaped the peloton either. The biggest lead they've got was just over 3 minutes. It's down now to just under 2, and we're approaching the last 32 kilometres of the race. Always a difficult race to judge. Early breakaways can succeed in this event because the riders preoccupied with the weekend World Cup race coming up. They don't want to overdo it. This used to be part of the famous Ardennais weekend when you used to ride the Fleche on the Saturday and Liège-Bastogne-Liège on the Sunday. And there still is a joint prize for the best position aggregated in the two races. Well, riders always want to go back and find out what the time gap is, just to see whether they should keep it going or not, and that caused a little bit of a split in the breakaway here, but it'll all heal up very, very quickly. Just drifting way off the back of the race just now, though, is Echevarria. Telecom driving now. This is Torsten Heikman. Well, what a result it could be if Bobby Julich comes round to Huy in this breakaway. He will climb well, I'm sure, up the climb to the finish line. If he gets a real chance, it could be a great return to top form for Bobby. It's been a long breakaway, well read indeed. CSC now driving here. That peloton still very big, but there's an awful lot of passengers now. 35 kilometres for the peloton to go. A minute 51 is the gap. So they've knocked another 7 seconds off, and it's taken them 6 kilometres to do it. Huge long turns at the front, which is the way to do it when you're chasing down a breakaway. Then swing off. Sorry about the picture break up there. Out in the country. We're back in the town here now at the moment. And then for the leaders. Sleepy towns these aren't the best of times, but looks as though they've all completely gone indoors today. There's nobody down there watching the race. And unusual, you don't see it in France of course, but there are cars parked on the road here in Belgium. And Unai Echevarria has come back onto the tail. I think he slipped off there for a natural break and rejoined, but they're coming in now to the last 30 kilometres or so. Once through the town here to Andon, there's the one road junction for them. There it is. Puts them onto the Route Nationale 90, one of the main roads here in this part of Belgium, but not for very long. They'll then swing off and start the climb of the Côte to Boisseau. Astaloa looking over at Fofanoff, in turn looking over at Christian Marini. There we are, just 200 metres now to the swing onto the climb of Boisseau. There's Bolts scurrying through, always wants to be near the front when the road starts to go up. But there hasn't been signs of anybody having any difficulty holding on in this breakaway today. They've all at some stage or other contributed to the attack, but the bulk of the work being done by the boys from Telecom. Certainly Udo Bolts, Christophe Moreau, the Seiko riders here. Bolts having a word there with Heikman, used to be teammates. This now is Kolobnev, Mark Lotz. Only won a couple of races in a long career. He's been a useful team man though, very strong rider, and he's got himself in a good position here to pull off a real win. This is the main field. This is the breakaway now coursing through the town. Oh, sorry, we're back to the main field here, coursing through the town. Down what looks to be a shopping mall. Well, the front runners, they're swinging out now onto that same Route Nationale 90. And to the crowd, they'll see what we've been seeing for a while on our pictures now, which is the Passabortolo riders doing most of the work. Looked like Ivan Basso himself was coming to the front there. Now maybe this is going to be the move as they get onto the little climb. He was about 4 or 5 wheels back, Basso, and he's a rider who will try to go. There he is. Well, that was not certainly not a 2-minute gap. I would suspect that that's around about 90 seconds now. Looks like Dave Brylant and Marlocks also prepared now for what they know is going to be some sharp attacks coming on these little springboards before the finish. They've got to come soon. They've got to get down and get across to that leading group, because if they don't, then the race is going to be won by the front. Sergei Ivanov still setting the pace here, pretty much as he has done for a long way here, to try and help reduce this big gap. We're back with the leaders now. I think this is the climb here as we leave. We've started the little drag, yes it is. Now 1 in 4, 1 in 5, 20%, an average gradient of only 5%. It has a nasty little leg in it. Looking through the legs there of Heikman. There you can see in the distance where the road kicks up. Udo Bolts, Fofanov. Well, 1:39, it looked to be around 1.5 at that roundabout, so 1:39. They're still coming back. The silent world of the breakaway racing cyclists here, nobody in conversation. We're all just hoping to get this climb over with as fast as it can go by. Heikman doesn't seem to be quite so happy on the climb. He sat here at the back, neither does Echevarria, the rider in the orange jersey. Christophe Moreau also back at the back again now, as he was on the previous climb. Kolobnev setting the pace, the youngster there on the Domina Vacanzi team, and also Unai Osa sitting here too. So the speed is hurting these Spanish and Venezuelan riders, even though they're very talented mountain climbers. This is the hard section. This is the 20% bit, and Torsten Heikman concentrating hard here. Mark Lott's also looking as though he's having to work, gritting his teeth, set his jaw. It's Kolobnev who's setting the pace. There's the composition again for you, but they haven't changed for about 2.5 hours or more now. And Christian Moreni, the Italian in this breakaway, could also do well, as I think could Mazzolini. And still nobody breaking away off the front. Now it's the turn of CSC as they come out of the town. 1:32. It's still coming down, but inside the 20 miles to go, 30 kilometers to the finish. Long turn on the front now, and that was enough there for, I think it was even off, but he's let a big gap go. And I thought they were trying to bring here Ivan Basso to a point of attack, and he's been rather compromised there by this move. But the legs are just beginning to crack as they climb away from the town of Onden. If that is Basso, Basso's still here. He's 3 men back there. Now this was a serious attack here to try and get a group away. Tyler Hamilton there, and it was a move which was hasn't really had any effect at the moment. The line very tenacious, so willing to hang on in this one and not crack under the pressure. There's the latest time check. Just about 90 seconds. Well, they're saying now 1:17. This, remember, is our satellite system, so it's more accurate. They're probably getting 1:30. We now know it's 1:16. Now it's becoming into the point of other types of tactics, I suspect. Riders who don't want to take the whole peloton across this gap, but would like to see their team leaders get across the gap and then move forward. It could become a very confused race in the next 10 kilometers if the whole peloton crosses. We're now entering the province of Liège over the top of the Côte de Boisseau. And we've still got the Côte d'Ahan, which is the famous springboard before the finish. Just like every big classic seems to have one last bite before the end. It's the Den Bosch climb in the Tour de Flanders, and the Coburg in the Amstel Gold. Well, here it's the Côte d'Ahan, and then once over the top of that, a bit of tricky riding will bring us down to Huy, and then it's up the hill to the finish. Strong pedalling here from the riders on CSC. Michael Blaudsen looks like the man, big strong time trial rider. They look as though they're getting themselves together now. They're sensing the kill, but still that most of the help coming from Fassa Bortolo and CSC. They really expected to crack the race last time up, and it didn't work. The race is all sat there right behind them. This is over the summit, in amongst the trees, which are now in full leaf, and somebody has got right off the front. I'm not sure this isn't Dave Brylance here from the Marlux team, who may just have slipped away with a good turn of speed. We're expecting Dave Brylance to do something special soon, because he's always in the thick of the action this year. He's got some good form, but they keep chasing him down. He finished 10th in the Tour de Flanders, which is an exceptional performance. Now I'm not sure it is Dave Brylance, it might be a Phonak rider in fact. But there's already a move on now. Being joined by one rider. United States flag flying well today. It's only a small team US Postal have put out without Lance Armstrong. Only 6 riders in the squad today, and we haven't seen any of them, I'm afraid. Been a breakaway without anybody in from USP. We might never know this rider, but it looks like the style of Dave Brylance. because the peloton has started to pin him back again. He's just trying to get a little group clear. He's trying to force daylight in that group. So far it just isn't happening for him. So as they come over the top now of the Côte de Boisseau, we're back with the leaders here, still 15 strong, still holding off the race. Look in the distance though, a lot of motorbikes coming forward now. That gap can't be far off 1 minute, which means that very soon we are going to see these vehicles stopped on the roadside. The commissaire, the race referee, out of the top of the car there, checking on it all of the time. They're saying 1:11, 27 kilometres to go, just over 15 miles to run to the finish. The peloton, the breakaway now know the gap down there. It wouldn't be enough under normal circumstances, that's for sure. They would get caught, but this is a big breakaway. And if our helicopter could just lift the camera a little bit, we might well see that group now back into the open countryside, just for a few moments as we head now back into the province of Liège. Here is the relationship. It's still a good gap, 1 minute and 11 seconds. The peloton is looking a bit ragged, but as tenacious as ever. Looks like the same riders still out in front. But there are holes appearing now as the strong men continue to keep the pressure up. This is Torsten Heikman at the back. Very difficult roads now, very difficult decisions to be made by the race referees, because you run the risk of being swamped by the peloton in these narrow roads. There's nowhere to put the vehicles. 42.5 kilometres an hour, the average so far. Well, this will be one of the fastest Fleche Wallonnes in recent times, that's for sure. And there's been no doubt that the riders have kept this pressure on throughout today. Lamprey still with their man Casagrande back there. 1 minute and 14 seconds the gap. Haven't done much today, but they're now trying to get away. Well, it's tough on the teams who've tried to bring this back, because it's often the case that once they try this, the other teams profit by it. You've got to finish it off when you chase a breakdown. And the Phonak riders are also getting themselves in on the act now. Now Seiko starting to move clear. Could be the style of Danilo De Luca, you know. This is just a typical move, and the sort of move he would try. And he's got himself a rider up there too that might help out. Just looking at that average speed there, it would make it the second fastest Fleche in history. Well, there's a name we'd almost forgotten about. Rumsas, first time I've seen him all year. The man who finished third in last year's Tour de France. At the same time, his wife was being caught at the French frontier with unexplained ampules of EPO in the car, which they later said was for the mother-in-law. And let me hastily say, this man has never ever failed a dope control, so he's completely clean, and we shouldn't think otherwise. But that now he seems to be getting himself back into his racing legs, because he's undergone a lot of pressure since the end of the Tour de France because of the accusations, none of which have been proved. Now trying to get on with his racing. So Rumsas, third in the Tour de France, has been joined at the front. Very, very interesting move, this one. And it's hit the peloton, remember. At the time it was in full flight. It may have disheartened one or two of the riders back there. This is the breakaway again, and under pressure as well now. And Udo Bolt's causing the problems, is he? Oh, a bit further to go. Oh, this is the peloton. This is still back with the peloton in very narrow roads here. Team Coast working it out at the front. Doesn't look like the style of Jan Ullrich. We haven't seen him all day. This is a good race for Ulrich, whether you want to put his foot down on this sort of condition and with these quality riders around him. It's who knows. I think he may look to Liège on Sunday. He's continuing his return, that's for sure. Now these are the two first riders from the peloton. Raimundus Rumsas looks now to be sitting up and awaiting the return of the heads of the race, Pervets. As we now are into Liège, inside the last 27 kilometres of the event, not far away from the climb of the Côte d'Anne, probably about 10 kilometres, and a minute 10 seconds the gap. Igor Astaloa sitting here at the rear of the breakaway, a man who could scurry up that climb if he gets there first. Maybe that's what he's thinking, because he was putting a lot of work in to this breakaway. He's either feeling it's going to get brought back, or he's saving himself for a possible move now. Now the other boys have been brought back here. And it looks as though that the Brioche La Boulangère team have now decided to give a hand out at the front. Didier Rousse is their sort of star, along with Sylvain Chavanel. Tight old Ben, that one. And Quick Step as well, and I'd completely forgotten about Frank Vandenbroek, because we haven't seen him all day either, or indeed anybody. Sorry about a little loss of picture there. But it looks to me now as though Quick Step, and it's Luca Paolini who's setting the pace there on the front, have still got men in here who could finish it off. It's a perfect finish for Frank Vandenbroek up the hill, providing he still isn't too tired, because it's been his big comeback year. He's ridden extremely well in the early classics, especially so in Het Volk and the Tour of Flanders. Had a rough ride, and didn't they all, in Paris-Roubaix, and he didn't make the finish, but this is a perfect race for him. So a few more teams now. It's amazing to think that Quickstep didn't put a man in the breakaway. They're not quite the team of Patrick Lefevre that we've seen in the last couple of years, even though they've got the big names. The big names are getting a little bit long in the tooth these days. And a minute and 20 seconds. Well, it's a painful way to catch up with the breakaway. 23 kilometres to go. Well, it's official now. We've entered Liège. But I think, in fact, we've been in it for quite a while, as we're now heading the long flat link now to the Côte d'Ain. And then we'll get down to the plunge, back down to the River Meuse, and up to the finishing line on Huy. This breakaway still got a lot of fight in it, I think. Remember that Bobby Julich of the United States is in this breakaway. He's the only English-speaking rider in the group. A lot of nationalities here: Kazakhstan, Venezuela, Lithuania, Italy, Germany, Spain, all represented in this breakaway, and France. And the young man sat at the back here too, who is also riding superbly this year, Kolobnev. He comes from Russia. There'll be a lot of disappointment, I think, in this breakaway if they get pulled back now, because they really have worked hard for this to succeed. It's been a long escape, but such a big group. 15 riders still surviving here. Number 64 is Angel Castanoma. And again, a group trying to get off the front, and once more Seiko are the riders trying to get involved in the action. 1 minute and 9 seconds as 3 riders try to go clear at 21 kilometres to go. So it might be Rumsas again here, is trying to get away from the front. Doesn't look like the style of Casagrande. The brioche rider could be the on-form at Chavanel. And they've got a gap for the first time. The peloton just coming around that top corner. Well, these are the 3 riders. The Seiko rider is in fact Fabio Sacchi here. Rider who started his season off by tradition in the Tour Down Under in Australia, where he was hoping to have won that race, didn't quite make it, but he did get himself up front in the leader's jersey again, which he so often does. And this could be an interesting messenger boy going up, because that will put 3 Seiko riders up front, and still not with Danilo De Luca. And just on 1 minute, 20 kilometres to go. It's going to be close, because the peloton is in 2 minds here. Some riders want to fight for it, some riders want the ride in preparation for Liège-Bastogne-Liège on Sunday. And these 15 riders haven't shown any real passengers. There are riders not working, but for different reasons, I think, rather than fatigue, because this breakaway basically has ridden extremely well today. And these sort of roads with the twists and turns will favour the group. It might be a little bit big at this stage, but even so, the rider at the back, Kolobnev, the Russian rider, just sat there now, but he's been up front before. Now you see us and now you don't. Somewhere down amongst the trees are the leaders. There they are. Well, they've just given the breakaway 20 kilometres to go there. Still got the climb of the Côte d'Ahin, which comes at around about 11 kilometres from the finish. Echevarria, Unai, not David, just hanging off. They're saying 18 kilometres now, so the time gap now inside a minute. It's taken a while, but they've got it inside 18 kilometres, just over 10 miles to race to the finish. It's going to be a desperate sprint up the hill, that's for sure, and I could see the peloton just about seeing them as they make the turn in Puy to start the climb. It could be as close as that now. And 1 or 2 riders here will be putting in a desperate attempt on the climb of the Côte d'Ahin, because they might see it as the last possible chance they have of breaking away, because they will feel that some of these riders won't be finishing ahead of the main field right now. So a few more teams now. It's amazing to think that Quick-Step didn't put a man in the breakaway. They're not quite the team of Patrick Lefevre that we've seen in the last couple of years, even though they've got the big names. The big names are getting a little bit long in the tooth these days. And 1 minute and 20 seconds. Well, it's a painful way to catch up with the breakaway. 23 kilometres to go. Well, it's official now. We've entered Liège. But I think, in fact, we've been in it for quite a while, as we're now heading the longer flat link now to the Côte d'Ahin. And then we'll get down to the plunge, back down to the River Meuse, and up to the finishing line on Huy. This breakaway still got a lot of fight in it, I think. Remember that Bobby Julich of the United States is in this breakaway. He's the only English-speaking rider in the group. A lot of nationalities here: Kazakhstan, Venezuela, Lithuania, Italy, Germany, Spain, all represented in this breakaway, and France. And the young man sat at the back here too, who is also riding superbly this year, Kolobnev. He comes from Russia. There'll be a lot of disappointment, I think, in this breakaway if they get pulled back now, because they really have worked hard for this to succeed. It's been a long escape, but such a big group. 15 riders still surviving here. Number 64 is Angel Castanoma. And again, a group trying to get off the front, and once more Seiko are the riders trying to get involved in the action. 1 minute and 9 seconds as 3 riders try to go clear at 21 kilometers to go. So it might be Rumsas again here, is trying to get away from the front. Doesn't look like the style of Casagrande. The brioche rider could be the on form at Chavanel. And they've got a gap for the first time. The peloton just coming around that top corner. Well, these are the 3 riders. The Seiko rider is in fact Fabio Sacchi here. Rider who started his season off by tradition in the Tour Down Under in Australia, where he was hoping to have won that race, didn't quite make it, but he did get himself up front in the leader's jersey again, which he so often does. And this could be an interesting messenger boy going up, because that will put 3 Seiko riders up front, and still not with Danilo De Luca. There's the peloton, that's the breakaway, sorry, going round the corner. And just on 1 minute, 20 kilometers to go. It's going to be close, because the peloton is in 2 minds here. Some riders want to fight for it, some riders want the ride in preparation for Liège-Bastogne-Liège on Sunday. And these 15 riders haven't shown any real passengers. There are riders not working, but for different reasons, I think, rather than fatigue, because this breakaway basically has ridden extremely well today. And these sort of roads with the twists and turns will favour the group. It might be a little bit big at this stage, but even so, the rider at the back, Kolobnev, the Russian rider, just sat there now, but he's been up front before. Now you see us and now you don't. Somewhere down amongst the trees are the leaders. There they are. Well, they've just given the breakaway 20 kilometers to go there. Still got the climb of the Côte d'Ahin, which comes at around about 11 kilometers from the finish. Echevarria, Unai, not David, just hanging off. They're saying 18 kilometers now, so the time gap now inside a minute. It's taken a while, but they've got it inside 18 kilometers, just over 10 miles to race to the finish. It's going to be a desperate sprint up the hill, that's for sure, and I could see the peloton just about seeing them as they make the turn in Puy to start the climb. It could be as close as that now, and 1 or 2 riders here will be putting in a desperate attempt on the climb of the Côte d'Ahin, because they might see it as the last possible chance they have of breaking away, because they will feel that some of these riders won't be finishing ahead of the main field right now. Well, there's the main field, that's the peloton rather, coursing the way downhill just now. Another kilometre ticked off, 52 seconds. It's coming down very consistently. And we've no further news on those 3. Our camera's not gone back there for the moment, because if that's the case, that time will be on the 3 chasers and not the peloton. But I have a feeling there will be a reaction to bring back Fabio Sacchi and the other 2 riders. Through the farmlands of the Ardennes as we now head towards the town of Ahin. And once we go through the town, we'll be back on that Route Nationale 90 briefly again before we climb up the little climb. This is it. Minute 15 seconds, so it is the three chasers at 51. The peloton is still out of this at a minute and 15 seconds. Fabio Sacchi in there for sure. I suspect Rumsas is as well. We'll wait for the third rider, who's the Brioche La Boulangère team. And I'd expect to see it Sylvain Chavanel as the most likely rider to have made the move for the team. Now the breakaway reorganises itself here on what is a bit of a nasty long straight road, because the three chasers are going to swing onto this road very shortly. And here they are, still clear. Now, right in the distance, I think where the cars are, they possibly can see the tail of that breakaway. A bit difficult to tell, they might just be far enough to be out of it. But even so, they're going to be close. And in fact, it is Walter Benetto here, who is the rider who's got up. And the rider for Lamprey, it looks like Rumsas. That's a very familiar face, is Rumsas. So he's been holding his form a bit of a secret. If he can hold off a group like this today, and he's willing to give it his best shot, anxious to re-establish himself. Interesting to see that the Tour de France has brought him in, because at the moment he's not in the Tour de France this year. Never won a race last year, but he did finish third in the Tour. This is Fabio Sacchi. Become something of an acquaintance over the years, Fabio, because of his appearances in the Tour Down Under. He held the race lead there for 3 days this year, and he's had some fine finishes in that race as well. He also led it last year, and his best finishing is his third. 45 seconds and a minute 13. Both groups are creeping back, but I think creeping is the word just now. This is going to be a very, very good finale, because somebody has got to go from that breakaway. There's Rumsas, willing to drive on now, decided to hold his move till late, and is now going for it. Very good time trial rider. Long turns at the front here now as he tries to cross a 45-second gap. Looks like he's got about a 54 chainring on there, and he's using it right now. And that is a good gap. That is a very good gap at this stage of the race, because the one small climb to come at Ahin, then it's a time trial down to the town of Huy, and a desperate sprint up it. The big peloton of 25 teams, now down to around about, I suppose, 35-40 riders down there. Christophe Moreau back up with the leaders again. Alexander Scheffer, Udo Boltz goes through. Mark Lotz. This could be a great result for one or two of these riders that we see a lot but don't win the big races. They know it now, and this man is happy to do all of the pulling. Sacchi there will be a passenger. He's got two riders up front. He could be taking the race winner across the gap. He's not going to help, because he allows Walter Benetto to go through, ex-rider on the Crédit Agricole team, and then picks up the back wheel of Rumsas. This could be a nice ride for Fabio Sacchi. He's 28 years of age right now, but he's had some good results. He finished fourth in Paris-Bruxelles once, much flatter race of course, same with Paris Tour. He's not a man for the climbs like this. They'll await them at the finish. As we continue now to converge on the town of Ahin. Still looking down at the breakaway here. 45 seconds, the last gap. It must have come down after that turn of speed by Rumsas. It's a desperate effort now. Still sat at the back here, Echevarria. There it is, 10% or 1 in 10, steepest point, just about 6% is the average gradient, and it's just under 2 kilometers long, and somebody's moved up the outside there. I thought it was Fofanov. That would be a typical move by the rider from Kazakhstan. They've got to decide now on this climb to break the breakup, because it's getting a little bit unmanageable, too many passengers, and they'll want to get strong men to get a working unit who could escape for the finish. 3 of them have just got off the front, soon to be 4. Now I'd expect that to be Asta-Lotha. And I think it is indeed, is it Mazzolini? It's Alexander Scheffer, in fact, the Seiko rider who's in the chase there. But now we're going to go up to the leaders. They've really split the group here. That was Kobolev. And these are the 2 riders now from Vina Calderola going it together. This will be Oscar Masson and Eddie Mazzolini, the man I told you to watch out for, because this is the perfect race for Mazzolini in a breakaway like this. And the man who started the move, I thought it was Fofanov, but this looks like a Seiko rider we're coming up to, which will be Asta-Lotha. And it is indeed. And if he is the leader, and I think he is, then this is a very, very good move by him. He moved quickly up the outside, took his chance. And he might have caught them at the right time, because they're not really reacting here. He's got good form. His 10th place in the Amstel Gold Race has shown that to us. He had a wonderful year last year with 2nd place in the Hughes Cup and 2nd place in the San Sebastian Classic and a 7th in Paris Tours. He came really good after the middle of the season. He hit form in July and he held it right to the end of the year. There's Unai Osa trying to do something as well. Scheffer now just hunking up with Masson and Mazzolini. He'll stay a passenger for a moment at least. Christophe Mareni and the other rider there, Alexander Kolobnev. They really have blown that breakaway apart, and this is good, because you see the riders coming up from the back will pick up stragglers. They will not know how many are still out in front for a while, because it was such a big breakaway. And Igor Asta-Lotha, who has good form, only 1 win, but his 10th place in the Amstel Gold Race just a few days ago says it all. 27 years of age now. There's no doubt if he won this classic, it would go down as his finest win. He's been knocking on the door last year, had good finishes in the World Cup because of it. Mazzolini working very hard there now to try and cross the gap, because he was the big dark horse, I think. Now what's those riders on the left of the screen? I thought they'd gone the wrong way, but they've taken the short route home. And they're there just in time to see Asta-Lotha go through for Seiko. This could be the big win Seiko have been knocking on the door for as well. Over the top of the Ahan climb. Now this is becoming a very confused race for the chasers behind now, because they're going to start creeping up on straggling riders. Unai Osa, and it looks like Osa, with a superb effort, has managed to reach Asta-Lotha here. Well, this is turning out to be a very strange race, because 2 riders of this quality from Spain dictating it to the men of Belgium and Holland, not something we expected at all. And I think, did I say Unai? I meant Aitor. These 2 riders now mixing it together again, as Aitor Osa hooks up now with the back of Asta-Lotha. No wins this year for Aitor Osa. Won the Tour of the Basque Country, Tour of the Pays Basque, the Low Country in Spain last year. better known perhaps for his King of the Mountains jersey in the Tour of Spain. And with Astaloa, these two riders could be setting something of a record. I haven't got all the results with me, but I can't remember an occasion when Spain got first and second in the Fleche Wallonne. Most unlikely, because this is not a race for the Spanish, so they tell us, and this could be an interesting result today. Well, there's just a chance. This is Mark Lotz coming up here with Alexander Scheffler along for the ride. Well, there's no way the Fleche Wallonne has ever had a 1-2 for Spain. And there might be no way today, because this breakaway, although it's split all over the mountain now, the Côte d'Ahan has really hurt the legs. Christophe Moreau leading these 5 riders here as they grit their teeth. This would be an extraordinary result. Now the yellow car is indicating the rear of the brake, but I've got a feeling that's the peloton now getting themselves into light here. 13 seconds and 21 seconds, but those splits could be just the breakaway split up just now. There's Mark Lotz, Udo Boltz, Fofanov. These are the back of what's left of those original 15 riders. And I think Bobby Julich is on the back of this group as well. Now 2 riders clear. Oh dear me, and Aitor Osa almost overcooked that one. Now this is where you scurry for the finish. You've done the work on the climb. Now you've got to hang on. Basically the hill's now behind the riders here as they now start to race down towards the river and into the finish. They're about 8 or 9 kilometers to go at this point. That's only about 15 minutes of riding, and the main field are still hovering on the shoulder. As far as we know, that chase of 3 is still there. Mark Lotz sitting here with Udo Boltz. And Bobby Julich just taking them around that corner. As we now see they've sent up cars here behind the 2 leaders, so they've rapidly opened a gap. Well, this would be a first if they could just land this one. Spain have never won the Fleche Wallonne, and they certainly could be doing it in grand style with a 1-2 here if this is the way it's going to be. This particular town is indeed 9 kilometers from the line. Well, once this breakaway established, so many riders in front with so many different nationalities and teams represented, I suppose we should have expected an unusual result. And here we have it now, the last 5 miles, 8 kilometers or so, and 2 Spanish riders dictating the affair. And again, not showing the greatest cornering skills, Aitor Osa, but they're certainly showing the speed here as Igor Astaloa forced the attack on the Côte d'Ahan. And there's the information which we can't quite read, but which they don't really need to worry about now, because once you've made the move this close to the finish, all you've got to do is keep your head down and go. There's no point in worrying about what's happening behind, because if they come up, you won't hold the wheel. And Osa has now recovered from the excellent chase he made to bridge that gap, and he bridged it very, very quickly in the end. But these two are so anxious to get through and keep the pace high. There are some tricky parts of this course now, one coming up. These left-hand bends as we start to wind down to the valley below. And you can see that Astaloa much better at going around corners than Aitor Osa, who's now having to sprint that gap shut, and a waste of energy it is. Well, both of these riders are going to go to the bottom of the Huy as joint favourites to win, because it's a climb. The sprint won't matter. It's a question of who is the strongest on the climb. They're both renowned climbers. Osa marginally the stronger as far as the big mountains go, but you know, I would probably give it to Astaloa as the strong man on such a short climb like the Hui of 1.4 kilometers. 7 kilometers to go. Astaloa and Osa heading to their biggest single-day victories of their lives. Whoever gets it, that's assuming they do get it, of course. We've sort of lost touch with the chase behind just now until our cameras swing round, but these two are definitely at the right end of the race. Two Spanish riders in tandem, and this will do the world of good for Spanish cycling, because to get a win in a race where you don't expect Spain to succeed ever, this is a big boost for them. And for Seiko or Benesto would be the ride of the year so far. That's the sharp hairpin, the left-hander, which has so often brought riders to grief, but they're straight round it now as we drop down towards the Valley Road. The next few kilometres will be rapid, and I can't see anybody racing across the gap at this stage. It's a question of whether they can survive up the climb itself. And off the hills now as we join the main road. And still two Spanish riders have got the control of this race. Spain has never won this race. And I'm pretty safe, I think, in saying Spain has never had a rider in the top 3 in the Fleche Wallonne ever since it began, which was back in 1936. And they could be winning the fastest Fleche Wallonne on record, or I think it'll turn out to be the second fastest by the time it's all calculated. Well, it's not that long ago when the Spanish riders didn't want to come to this part of the world for the World Cup Classics, because they never did well in them. And although this race doesn't count for the World Cup, which is largely due to the fact it drops right in the middle of the busy time of the year, and they've already got in Belgium Liège-Bastogne-Liège and the Tour of Flanders, that's probably the only reason. This is the regrouping, if you like, and they're still clear of the rest of the breakaway. And no further news on Saki, Benetou and Ramsas. This is Mareni. And looking in the distance, they might survive the chase back here. Ramsas was the strong man, but he hasn't crossed the gap. No sign of a lone chaser in the distance. Christophe Moreau will do just enough and expect others to help out now. They've allowed two riders from Spain to slip them, and they don't look like they're going to bring them back. Well, Seiko were hoping for the win today. They haven't got it yet, mind you, but they were expecting it to come. Danilo De Luca, and certainly not from this rider here, Igor Astaloa. Marginally the favourite now if these two come to the line, but only marginally, and they both know each other's ability. Astaloa, a winner of 5 races in his career, placed twice second in World Cup Classic races, but never had a result like this. He'd be second again at worst if he can keep these two clear, as we're racing now down towards Hui itself. And Aitor Osa rather, king of the mountains in the Vuelta last year, but he's never appeared in the hunt for a prize in a big single-day race before. Sometimes, you see, the peloton can make mistakes, and the gamble of a breakaway does pay off. Oscar Masson and Mazzolini still working here. Echevarria working more now. And the smoke from the cooling towers there indicating very little wind today once you're out of the hills. As we head down now towards the Meuse and onward to the finish in Hui. Well, they're saying it's Hui. We're on the outskirts. We're about 3 kilometers or more. These two riders willing now to share the pace, and they can't afford to relax and worry about the strength of each other. Here we take the left turn here. They can't relax at all. That breakaway will be on them. There can only be seconds in it. It is possible to reach riders, of course, on the climb of the Huy. It is so steep, and if you've got great legs, you can sprint the gap shut. But I think the gap is opening just that little bit too much now in favour of the two Spanish. A little bit of a historical moment now. Spain making a 1-2 for the first time ever in this event. We had Andreas Klier winning, the first German rider to win that event a couple of weeks ago, Gent Wevelgem. We've had some strange but very invigorating results in the big races this year already. And Vinokurov winning last week in the Amstel Gold Race. Not far away now from Huy, there is the Meuse, or the Maas, which links Belgium and Holland. And it's not long now before we flick up the climb of the Huy. We haven't got any accurate time check anymore. Our cameras are now well spread out around the course as they race towards the finish here. Igor Asteloa and Aitor Osa, two Spanish riders better known for their escapades in the stage races and the high mountains, have now managed to use a little small climb called the Côte d'Ahin to spring away from a breakaway of 15 men and set Spain up for the first ever 1-2 in this event. Now they're arguing with each other now. I think we just got under the kilometre because I may be wrong, but there was a banner there. We turned right. Officially we're on the climb. It just starts to drag just before the kilometre as we start to move around the corners now. 25% for that little kick in the middle round by the houses. Now who's got the legs? Osa is going to have to hang on, I feel, to Asteloa. Asteloa is confident, but Osa looking for his own path up this climb, and he's going to, I think he might well be going to try and hit Asteloa here. He's certainly willing to keep on the pressure, not afraid to hit the climb. It's going to be mano a mano on this climb. Two Spanish climbers are going to go together on the climb and ride it out, shoulder to shoulder. May the best man win. It was Asteloa who made the attack, an inspired ride across the gap by the other Spanish rider, Osa. Now they've decided to make it shoulder to shoulder, and the strongest man will conquer the mountain. It gets harder just around the corner. If you're a non-climber, then you'll be very, very frightened by what you see, but these boys love the mountains. Crowd will cheer them all the way up here, but they must be a little bit mesmerised by the fact that they're watching two Spanish riders come to the finish of the Fleche Wallonne together. Never before has this been seen in the history of the race. At 500 metres, they are shoulder to shoulder, and they've clearly opted to go one-on-one, no tactics at all. Asteloa on the left of our picture, and Osa keeping tempo. This is a little bit of history now for Spain. And it'll make Spain very proud, because there aren't many riders come here and beat the Belgians or the Italians in Fleche Wallonne. Jean-Marie Leblanc watching on. And still they ride side by side into the last 400 metres now. This is the steep part of the climb. Begins to ease a little bit. Asteloa one-on-one is showing the strength, almost tempting Osa to come at him as he accelerated, but he desisted. They're coming up to the last couple of 100 metres of the climb, and still they are side by side. 300 to go. Well, they're going to have to break shortly. Both sides want the big win. For either rider, it will be their greatest single-day victory. Anyway, the king of the mountains of the Vuelta a España on the far side of the camera, Asteloa, with a couple of good second places in classic races, looking for the one win that has eluded him. At 200 metres, they haven't made their move yet. Now Asteloa goes, and the acceleration plain to see. Igor Asteloa gives Seiko the victory from a long, long breakaway today. And it will mean that Aitor Osa will take second place. Either way, a historic 1-2 for Spain in the Fleche Wallonne. The speed was always in Asteloa's legs. This is the man who will be looking to defend his King of the Mountains title in the Tour of Spain in September. But for now, like Astalloa, he's getting his finest ever ride in the Fleche Wallonne. And probably at 42.074, this will be the second fastest event in the history of the series. Aitor Astalloa. So 2 Spanish riders have really given the old 1-2 to the breakaway today of 15 men. Have they all survived to the end as they continue to climb? That was a massive gap they built. And the field coming up here now is the main field, but these are surviving. This is Fleche still trying to hang on from Echevarria and the young man Kolobnev. Fleche is coming away. The breakaway has survived, as also Echevarria will make it up in 4th place. 5th place will be Kolobnev. And that was Masson just passing through, but Fleche will get 3rd. And Unai Echevarria will take 4th, another man from a far-off nation. Kolobnev, Masson, Moreni, and then the last man there at the moment will be Angel Castrasana, Moreau and Mazzolini. So the breakaway survived. This is the race now. There's Tyler Hamilton battling on the climb. They got so close, but it was always on the cards. They weren't going to close the gap. It has been a long, tough ride here. That looks like Bogart might be slipping up underneath our camera. There's Tyler Hamilton. Top 15 place for him. Some very tired men coming up the climb today. Well, they've got 3 days off now. Then they can face up to Liège-Bastogne-Liège. As the riders come in, that could well be Jan Ullrich just coming in across the line there. Not looking too perplexed if it is. Difficult to tell with the sunglasses and crash helmets on these days, and the change of colours, of course, for Ullrich. And we haven't seen him ride for about 15 months. But certainly making a fine return to form, as all of the riders now drift in what has been an extraordinary Fleche Wallonne. So we look down here on the lovely town of Huy as we now see the result. Igor Astalloa ahead of Osa, Fleche, Echevarria, Kolobnev, Masson, Moreni, Castrasana, Moreau and Mazzolini. All of those 10 riders in the long breakaway today, which survived all of the efforts of the Fassa Bortolo in particular, and CSC, the team from Denmark. This is how it all happened. They clearly made a deal that we'd climb together and may the strongest man make it the victory. Well, there was no doubt that Igor Astalloa, doing what he did on the Côte d'Ain, did the same on the Côte de Huy and used that powerful acceleration to go clear for his first ever classic victory. Although it's not a World Cup race, the Fleche Wallonne, believe me, is regarded as a classic. So the crowd can go home and enjoy the occasion next year, but they'll remember this one, a 1-2 for Spain. Hope you've enjoyed the coverage. I'm Phil Liggett saying so long for now.